I'm telling my mom about all this, and she said, girl, you better be careful. He followed her to be with his kids. She could be moving all over the place, and I was like, no, I talked with him about that. That's not going to happen. Oh, man. Yeah, did that happen?
You're listening to the Nacho Kids podcast, where we discuss all things step family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to episode 270 of the Nacho Kids podcast. Before I forget, registration for the Guided Bootcamp Challenge opens August the 8th. We will tell you more details later. All right, our guest today is Stepmom Keri. She has one ours daughter who is 5, a stepdaughter who is 10, and a stepson that is 11. But stepson 11 is actually not her husband's biological child. I know, it can get confusing, but we explain it. So let's get to listening. Today we have stepmom Keri. Hey, Keri, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So tell us a little bit about your blend.
Okay, well, this is my second blend. My first blend started when I was 20 years old, and it lasted 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my stepdaughter, I guess former stepdaughter, she was only a year old when my ex-husband and I got together. So the entire thing was just completely different than what my blend is now. My ex-husband at the time, he was not very willing to be involved. And I was more so like, well, you need to step up, you need to handle your business. And, so I mistakenly, kind of pushed him to go to court and, get some visitation for himself and start paying child support and just do the things that he was supposed to do. So I was very hands-on and, she was a tiny baby, so the relationship there was just very different, and then, lasted till she was like almost 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then after my divorce, my ex-husband and I, we were still, we were on good terms, and I was still regularly seeing his daughter because it was really important to me. She was the only, child I had at the time. And so I did feel very much so like mom, at least on, an occasional basis. Anytime she was with us, I was, of course, handling all of the things. And so he would let me see her for a while, but then that changed when he got into a relationship. And, so he completely cut any visitation or anything that I had with her. So that was definitely a tough situation to kind of deal with. And after listening to the podcast, I hear that definitely happens. And, it's definitely a tough reality to be faced with, like as much as you can love a child, if you do not have any legal rights to this child, like as much as your friends and family say, oh, well, you're mom. Oh, that's still your baby. Like you're still mom. Like that's just not the reality of it. So right. I was no longer able to see her or anything like that. And we lost contact. I did reach out to mom not long after that happened. But of course, I didn't hear back. So that was tough. And so when I met my now husband.
Okay, hang on a second. A lot of times we will see a stepmom say, oh, no, if my husband and I split up, I am still a part of this child's life. Mm-hmm. It's even in our court papers or whatever, right? And that sounds all good and dandy. You've been in the kid's life for a while. For you, it sounds great. But then when somebody else comes in the picture, things change.
Yeah.
And that somebody that came in the picture could have been on your side.
Right. Yeah.
And they would have been like, wait a minute. Why are you going every other weekend and getting your ex's kid when you could be spending time with me? It just complicates things.
Yeah, it really does. And honestly, I definitely could have seen that maybe happening. Like if I had been able to keep a relationship with her and then meeting my now husband and like taking away time from spending time with him and his kids to see my ex-husband's daughter. It's all of...
It's a mess.
It's a mess. Yeah, it's messy, and...
Well, and I think it can be good for the children to still have a relationship with you, but keeping you so involved, I think, is unhealthy for the children.
Yeah, I think it confuses things,
Yes.
and kids, I mean, it's the way things are just with life, it can be tough. And I definitely think it adds an element of confusion and extra potential heartbreak for a child that, just you don't have to do it that way. And
Right.
it's hard. It's definitely hard when you spend years with them.
Yes. And say that dad gets little Susie every other week. So all of a sudden she's with mom one week, dad one week. But during that week, she's with dad. Every other weekend, she's with old stepmom.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, I am not a person who ever lives with regrets. I find that everything happens the way things are going to happen, and you just have to make the most of the situations. But when that happened, yeah, I was crushed. And when that happened, I was very adamant of, I'm not dating anyone with kids. And so, and of course, that's not what happened.
Well, and when she gets older, she may reach out to you, or you could reach out to her.
Yes, and actually, I did find her. She's 18 now, which is
Oh, wow.
and yeah, it's crazy. She's 18 now. I did find her on Instagram. She let me follow her. She posts things here and there and stuff, and I've tried to kind of lightly engage and stuff, but she doesn't say anything back. But you know what? It's okay. Like I'm okay. And honestly, hearing the podcast and just like listening to other people's stories, like it is what it is.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so that relationship ends.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because you saw that your husband wasn't a very active partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were
Go
pulling
ahead.
the weight.
I was pulling all the weight. And we had talked about, having kids and everything. And I mean, by year 7, I was like, if I have a child with this person, I'm going to be doing this on my own.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't do this. I can't, help raise your kid, but do most of the work all on my own and then have my own kid and have to deal with all of that, So yeah, things they did not work out with that first one.
You said you helped him get visitation and all that
I
stuff.
did, yeah.
Do you know if he continued with that visitation or if he got her less once you were out of the picture?
So yes, I do know, because I was still trying so hard to be involved. And, I mean, whether or not that's a good thing or whether or not I'm just a busybody, I don't know. But so yeah, he did continue to have that regular visitation. And I want to say it was for maybe 6 months or so, because that was about as long as it was where I was still able to see her. And then the new relationship came in, and he said that he was no longer going to, bring her by to let me see her and stuff. And I spoke with some of his friends who we were mutual friends with, and, they had said like that he had gotten a new place to live, and like her room became the pet's room, and so she didn't really like coming anymore. She just felt like she didn't have her own space, and she just didn't feel like he ever really made time for her, so she started coming less and less. And he and I actually spoke probably a couple of years after we had split up, and I, just to check in, I wanted to see how she was doing. And he said that she hadn't come to see him in a while, I guess after a big blow up during like drop off, like, how tantrums can happen, I mean, and by that time she was 10. So I'm thinking she's throwing a big tantrum, like, she don't want to be there with you,
Right.
like she just doesn't want to go. And then, she moved away, she moved out of state, he moved out of state. I mean, as far as I know, he probably hasn't seen his daughter in 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of getting out of everything that I've seen and heard from our mutual friends.
Well, you said you don't have regrets.
I don't.
So you don't regret getting him more time with her?
I don't. I don't regret that because, well, so My ex-mother-in-law, she was a difficult person, and she was the one who was always going to pick up, granddaughter and things like that, which again is very common. My mother did the same thing with my first nephew. My brother was not ready to be a parent. So grandma was jumping in doing all the things, but then we were married, and I was like, well, it shouldn't be like that. You have no reason to not be handling things and doing all those things. So whether or not he was able to maintain that, I think it was necessary for him. He definitely needed to step up and do what he was supposed to do, at least on that very basic level of trying to fight for visitation and things like that. But no, I don't have regrets. It gave me a lot of time with her, and I can't regret that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love that you say you never live with regrets. So I want to talk more about that at some point.
Okay.
We may even have to have a different podcast, because I would say, well, what about this? And what about that? So we may have to have it different. Yeah. Because I think it's great to not live with regrets. But I also know personally, there are certain situations that I struggle with applying that to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been years and years of probably listening to lots of different types of podcasts, honestly. I listened to a secular Buddhism one, to just be a more well-rounded person, and, just to take situations that come into my life just as they are and use them to just propel myself forward. So I feel like even the things that are negative, or in that I see them as negative, because things that happen are just things. I just really try to look at it as, what can I take away from this positively?
Right.
Because
I
feel like
this.
Yeah, exactly. Because everything is, because I've been through some, stuff, but I am who I am today because of those things, for better or for worse. And, I'm just, it is what it is.
I hate that phrase, just so you know.
I know you do. I know you do. I know.
It drives me crazy. Trigger.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So y'all split up.
Yes.
And how soon later did you start dating your now husband? Is he your husband now?
He is my husband now. Yes.
Okay.
We got together about 2.5 years after that. 2.5 years of awful dating experiences, and really just things to be like, you know what, I am not putting myself through this anymore. But then, gosh, my ex-husband and I, we got divorced. I was 28, from 20 to 28, and to already be in my mind of I'm done, throwing in the towel, I was just like, okay, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
So I got into therapy, and he was like, well, if you want to be in a relationship, you're going to have to actually try. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess.
You mean I have to try?
Right. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, you mean it's just not going to happen, and someone's not just going to knock on my door and say they're a wonderful, upstanding person who is a good dad and
right.
do all I know. So, my therapist pushed me to getting myself back out there, and I was still very adamant about the no kids. And then he messaged me, and he said that he had a 3-year-old daughter. But he also told me that in addition to that, he was taking care of his daughter's older brother, so like his stepson, that they weren't ever married or anything, but he'd been around this young boy for a while. So he was 11 years old, and he was still taking care of him. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted to do with my stepdaughter. And look at this, this man is taking care of his daughter, and he's taking care of a son who is not his, and he's just trying to do right by him. So that was the thing. I was just like, oh, this is the one for me. He's doing all the things that I would do. So that was honestly what won me over, was the fact that he was taking care of, his daughter's older brother who was not his, but
I have to tell you this. Yeah. I just finished recording a podcast with a lady, the same exact scenario.
Really?
Yes. The oldest, quote, quote, stepchild is not his biologically, but he's still part of the family.
Yeah. And that's funny because like on the form that you sent out, it was like, what's unique about your blend? And I thought, well, man, after hearing all the stories, I don't think there ain't one thing unique about myself. Like there's so much that so many people experience all over, with doing, blended lifestyles. And it's just the only thing that's unique are the individuals themselves and kind of what they bring to the blend. That's kind of how I kind of see it.
Well, every situation is unique.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
its own way.
You're right. And that's it too. Yeah. Like it's, each individual person brings something to the blend and how we react to the blend and just all of that.
Mm-hmm. So you swore you weren't going to talk to anybody that had kids.
Yeah.
I guess you did the dating online.
I did dating online. Yeah. We met on Match.com.
Well, I guess you've listened to our podcast. David and I met on Plenty of Fish.
Yes.
Yeah. I still don't like to tell people that.
I thought it's like a weird stigma. It feels strange and weird. I don't know if maybe it's a generational thing. I feel like maybe this new generation is just one more way to meet somebody, but
yeah,
doing it online and everything, it was just it was strange,
weird. Yeah. Thank goodness I didn't end up in Food Line and somebody go, I saw you on Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, like, just shoot me. He messaged you on Match.
Yes.
And you're like, he's got a kid. Well, he's got 2 kids, right?
Yes. Literally the night before, I was like, I'm done with this. Like it had only been a few months, but a few months of online dating and the messaging back and forth and the getting the same type of messages where it's like, you're not looking for what I'm looking for. And now this is just wasting my time.
Right.
For 3 months of that, I was like, so done. And literally the night before, I was like, I need to just be done for a bit. I don't really want to do this right now. Like, this is just not working out. And he messaged me. I'm a teacher, so I'm up early. I was already in my classroom. It was 6:15 in the morning. And he messaged me and I thought, oh gosh, like my eyes rolled and I was like, what is this guy saying?
Let me start my day off with somebody blowing smoke up my butt.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I was like, I'm already going to be doing that with, high schoolers, like,
yeah.
But yeah, no, he messaged me. He told me about the kids and everything. And I was like, you know what? He seems normal enough, I'll give it a shot. I'm going to give this a shot, and at the time he was like a weekend dad. He had just moved to where I was living. I'm originally from California. So he had just moved there and baby mama had also just moved there with her new boyfriend and then the 2 kids.
Okay.
And so I'm telling my mom about all this and she said, girl, you better be careful. He followed her to be with his kids, she could be moving all over the place, and I was like, no, I talked with him about that. That's not going to happen. Oh man. Yeah. Did that happen? And I can get to that, but we started dating. He's having the kids every single weekend. And he was a nighttime short haul truck driver. So he's home every night, but he's working, graveyard shifts and, I guess he's home every morning, I should say, which is why he texted me at 6:15 in the morning. But he's having the kids every weekend, which to me, after going through my first blend, it was like every other weekend, I was like, okay, I guess that's just how it's done. But I was like, man, you have them every single weekend? Like, when do you get to do something? Yeah. And he's like, well, I don't. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, we had just started dating. No, I wasn't trying to, poke no bears or nothing. So we did.
You don't want to say, oh, you shouldn't get your kids every weekend.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess when you're off of work and I'm off of work, it's kid time, which is, it was fine. I'm happy with that.
Well, in a way, it makes you look at, he's a devoted father.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It was exactly. That was so different from what I had the first time where I was like, oh,
Right.
Okay, he's given up every single weekend to spend every minute he has with these kids, one of which is not his.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like with David and him having 4 kids and having custody.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
that's rare. And so you just
Yeah.
think they're a great person.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And he is a fabulous person, but that was definitely, it was a huge draw for me, especially I feel like, like as a teacher, like it's just something built into me, to be nurturing and mothering and take care of all these babies, like
Mm-hmm.
these are all my babies, and they're
All my babies. Yep.
yeah. And I mean, my kids are high school kids, so it's like completely different too. I have 150 babies, like every single year.
Mm-hmm.
But so anyway, things were going like that. Things were great. But then 8 months in, bio mom gets cheated on with the boyfriend that she moved to California with.
Uh-oh.
And she wasn't working, didn't have no job, was living in his place. And she decides at this moment, well, I need to ask for him back. Yeah. Yeah. She's like, I have nowhere to go. She had no job, and when they were together, he was the sole breadwinner.
Why,
So,
why did they split up?
well, because she cheated on him with this person.
Okay. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, she cheated on him with this person and they left. And, my husband went to be with the kids because he didn't want to leave the kids. And
Mm-hmm.
then she gets cheated on by the guy. And she doesn't have no solution. She's got nowhere to go.
Oh, so let me go back and beg the person I cheated
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah.
Please, please, dear cheated on one. Take
Exactly.
me
Right.
back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that happened, and like he tells me that this happened, that she, came to him and everything, and he was not warring with the idea of getting back with her. His thing was, oh my gosh, now my kids are leaving again.
Right.
And her family is all from the East Coast. Like my husband is originally from Delaware, which is where we live now. And so she was leaving clear across the country, 3,000 miles away. She
Oh
was
my
like, I'm
gosh.
leaving. I'm taking the kids. I'd love for you to come with me and be with me. And he's like, like I'm dating, I'm with Keri and she makes me happy. But he and I having this conversation about him leaving to go with the kids, I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? So we were like split up for, it was like 2 days, where I was like, we need to be thinking, like let's think about things. It'd only been 8 months, and he was like, well, like, would you be willing to come?
And you're like, man, 8 months.
For real. Yeah. I'm like, man, it's been 8 months. But also I'm like, okay, I'm almost 30. I've been divorced. Things did not work out. I had a plan, nothing worked in my plan. And I thought, you know what? Like, I've been here my whole life. I'm going to take a chance. And if it doesn't work, at least I've done something way out of my comfort zone, because I'm very much a person who I like a routine.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that I'm neurodivergent a little bit, like well, it's a spectrum. Everybody's on the spectrum.
Well, I was going to say, I talked to a lady one time on a podcast and she was neurodivergent. And everything she would say, I'm like, that sounds like me.
Right. And that's the thing too. It's like, I haven't taken any tests, but when I hear
Mm-hmm.
people saying, I'm like, that sounds an awful lot like what I do,
Uh-huh.
so it's just, I like to be in a bubble. I do things in my little bubble, so when this opportunity, came up, I thought, this is my shot, and again, I like to live with no regrets. And I've just thought, if I don't say yes, I'm
I'll
going to
never
regret.
know.
I will never know what will have happened. And that's going to bother me.
Yeah.
And so I went into it. I was like, you know what? If this works, awesome. If it doesn't work, I moved halfway, I moved across the country. Like, that's amazing for me. Like
Right.
it was a huge, huge step for me.
Yeah, kind of like when I met David, started talking on Plenty of Fish, and I went to meet him, and my friend's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm like, I can't either.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about 3 months of online dating where I was like texting phone numbers, license plates, like all these like things to my friends. Like, this is where I'm at. This is their name. This is the number they gave me. Like, trying to, it
Yep.
was just, yeah, it's a crazy world out there.
Yeah, you had a code word for if
Yes.
you needed them to text you for an emergency so you could leave.
Yep. Yeah. All of
Hmm.
those things. So this was huge for me, and my friends were like really blown away and honestly a little nervous for me because they were just like, this does not sound like something that you would do.
Yeah,
And
she's
I thought,
flipped, y'all. She's
yeah,
flipped.
exactly. Yeah. They were like, is she okay? She's having a crisis. So we waited for the school year to end. So we moved over the summer, but she took the kids right away. She took the kids right away. So we had 5 months, 5 beautiful months where the kids were on the East Coast, we were in California, and it was just then every weekend it was just to be us, it was really great. And I'm so blessed that we actually had that time. Because then when we got to Delaware, it was like, okay, now I'm jumping into full blown mom mode,
Hmm.
which rookie mistake. I guess I
Yep.
couldn't even be considered a rookie considering I'd already done it once.
Yeah, you already did this once.
I know, man. Ain't that a trip?
Yep. And you're going to go back in again full force and then wonder why things are the
And
way they are.
exactly. Yeah, man.
So
Yeah.
during that 5 months, did he see them at all?
He did not see them, no, because we were in California and they
Okay.
were on the East Coast, so he would do like, regular calls and all of that. And like, goodness, the little one, I mean, she was 4, so she wasn't a great, conversationalist on the phone. So there wasn't much happening as far as like chatting and all that stuff. But literally as soon as we arrived, the next day she dropped them kids off. Like we pulled up in the U-Haul. We're staying at my brother-in-law, my future brother-in-law's house, and she dropped them kids off quicker than I thought.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Welcome. Here you go.
Uh-huh. So anyway, we got to Delaware and I told him, I said, look, because like on the one hand, I was like, yay, I'm free spirit, I'm doing something out of my comfort zone. But also I was like, if I'm doing this, like I just left all of my friends, all of my family. I left my dream job. I was working at my old school, my old high school, like it was where I wanted to teach.
Yeah.
I did all of those things. I said, look, like if I'm doing this with you, you need to like do things a little bit different than what I saw when the kids were here. I said, for one, like every weekend, like we can't be doing that. Like we're going to build a life. Like
Mhm.
we can't do that. Like it just can't be that. And my sister-in-law, she wasn't my sister-in-law then, she's also his sister-in-law. She was really into like, she was like looking at the court stuff and, trying to like trying to get ways to like help and make things work out. And so that's when we kind of came up with the 50-50 solution of 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Which I know is slightly different. A lot of people do 1 week on, 1 week off if they're going to do a 50-50 thing. I was not a huge fan of like a Wednesday to Saturday. Like when I hear people say those schedules and I'm like, what? How
Yeah,
do
the
you
2-2-3-3.
possibly, yeah, like how do you possibly keep that straight? Like, especially as a teacher, like kids need consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're having a hard time figuring out that schedule, and if they don't feel like they have a home base at either home, like I told him, I was like, we can't do it that way. Like I was cool with 1 week on, 1 week off.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying me, even though lo and behold, down the line, it was like, it ain't about me. But
Yeah.
we were just like, we need it to be more time. And he called her and told her, and she like flipped out. She was so upset. She's like, I knew you were going to try to change everything. And, like, we just need to do child support, because I guess like he was paying not so much child support, but like paying back on like debts that they had accumulated together as
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a way to like, do things. And I was like, what if you do 50-50, and like her life is comparable to your life, like according to the state of Delaware, like you don't need to worry about child support, like just make things equal and everyone should be okay. And I mean, it took maybe an hour after she got off the phone, all livid. It took an hour. She had to have talked to somebody who was like, girl, you need to take that deal. Like, you can do this. And I think she kind of realized, oh, maybe I can do some things for myself too, because now she actually had to get a job, because she hadn't been working or nothing. So she was going to have to be full-time working, full-time momming. And, he told her, like, if I have the kids, like, you can have time to be able to do things for yourself that you need to do or that you want to do or, anything.
Yeah, but she was used to having every other weekend free. I mean, every weekend free.
I know. She was used to having every weekend free. So she did see it like she was going to be losing something. But then she was like, oh, I'm going to take a cooking class and I'm going to do all these things, and my husband has always been like, do what you need to do to make yourself the best. So that way you can be the best for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what he's always said, like, and that's why he was so like, if you think moving to California and getting a job there or doing whatever is going to be what's best for you, which will in turn be best for my kids, then okay, then I will support you for that.
Yeah.
But with this last conversation to go to Delaware, he was like, this is the last time I'm doing this, like I can't keep moving all over the place, So she got on board. She got on board with the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And it was nice. And we honestly still do that to this day, is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And it's clear, it's cut. Like, stepdaughter, she's got everything she needs at one house. She's got everything she needs at the other house. She doesn't need to, the only bag she takes is her backpack when it's during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
But, we don't have to worry about anything except for, like, oh, I bought this toy and you left this toy, gosh, I hate all that stuff.
Yes.
What clothes did you wear here? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So y'all don't really deal with that a lot.
We do not. We don't have to worry about that so much, except when we were taking care of both kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the kids seem to always be coming over in something ratty. And, like,
surprise!
And I've heard, yeah, and I was like, don't you guys have socks that don't got holes in them? Like, like, I feel like I always see the same, and the thing is, I was like, okay, she's a single mom. She didn't have a lot of stuff. I get it. We had nothing but hand-me-downs, growing up. So it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I kind of feel like now, because I was the one buying the clothes and doing the shopping for the school and all that stuff. And it wasn't because my husband didn't step up. It was because I didn't let him.
Right.
I was just like, okay, well, I'm the mom and this is what the mom does. So I'm doing this, So he definitely, he got away from having to do a lot of stuff the first like 5 years or so.
From your first blend, the daughter, your stepdaughter, was very young.
Yes, she was. She was very young. Yeah.
And this stepdaughter was how old when you came in?
Oh, she was 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, she was still young too.
Still young. She doesn't honestly remember a time when I wasn't in her life.
Right. Jackson doesn't remember a time David wasn't in his.
Yeah. See, yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like, she asked me questions and I'm like, honey, I don't know. I wasn't there when you were born.
Yeah.
But yeah, so things were going well. We started to have a lot of issues with stepson. I think honestly, he has a lot of mental issues. And so again, I keep tying everything back to the fact that I'm an educator, but like, I see so much, I'm exposed to so much, and I get given a lot of resources for kids, like there's so many things that teachers have to be like acutely aware of with their students, mental health issues and, like malnourishment and just all of these things.
Right.
And I was just like seeing things and I just thought, there was like a little bit of light self-harm and some light like suicidal ideation, if that, okay. And so I was like, like we need to get him some help, because he and I had a great relationship. He had a really negative relationship with his mom. So, and I always felt like he kind of gravitated to me because of that. And also like we look similar, like our skin complexions are similar, and people would always just assume that he was my son. And so he just really gravitated to me. He would tell me things that he never told his mom, and he wouldn't tell my husband, so we just had like a very close bond, a close relationship. And I appreciated the fact that he was comfortable coming to me with things. But I was like, well, I have to I have to try to help, like I've got to help him. So we were trying to help him. And, mom was very, very against therapy and things like that. She didn't think that would help. And because apparently it didn't help her when she was a young kid, she had him when she was 15.
Okay.
And, I don't know all of her past and things like that, but it wasn't easy. And his dad was not really in the picture. And his dad was also not allowed to be in the picture. He had been in prison. And then when he got out of prison, bio mom was not letting him have any contact. Okay. So he has not had any contact with his biological father since he was like 5 years old. So there was just a lot of issues there with him, and we tried really, really hard to help him. And like school was an issue, school is an issue with a lot of kids anyway. But I think because of like the mental health stuff, like I kind of tied that together. Like, it was just this whole big puzzle, this big problem for me to try to fix, and I just wasn't equipped to fix it, And he ran away from home and he came to us. So she was really upset about all of that. And finally, things just started to get just really messy with him. And we supported her. I can't say we because it wasn't our choice, but we supported her in putting him into like a youth facility for a few weeks after, he talked about suicidal stuff and things like that. But where things went wrong is once he came out of that place, because those places are designed not to fix anybody. They're there to stabilize you. They stabilize you till they know that you're, relatively okay. And then they send you on their way.
Right.
So he got stabilized and he got out, and I would talk with her because the other thing I didn't mention is I completely 100% was the only one doing any communicating with her. My husband was not communicating with her at all. Because as soon as we got here, it was just fights and yelling and screaming. And I said, we're not doing this. Like, This is not how I do things. And we are grown-ups and these are just kids. And so if you guys can't play nicely, then I will just chat, because I knew she wasn't going to create any issues with me because people are afraid of me.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, and I don't know why. I'm an intimidating person, I guess. I'm just strong-willed. I say it like it is. I just do things that way, and she was actually okay with that. So, we did years and years of just, she and I were the only ones talking. We talked every day. We texted every day about the kids. What's going on about the kids? What are the kids doing? How are the kids feeling? Like all of this constant. And I feel like a lot of that was me. I don't know if she would have been so like open to chat so much were it not for me like reaching out and doing those things. But that's just kind of how I felt like things should be done. Like I wanted it to be a co-parenting thing. Like that's what I wanted. That was my whole idea. But once stepson came out of the facility, she, for better or worse, I don't know. She made the choice that she thought was best for him, which was she wasn't going to focus on his school stuff. She wasn't going to ask him about homework. She wasn't going to do any of those things. She was basically just going to let him be, because she didn't want to
push him.
She didn't want to push him, and it's taken a while for me to not be really upset about that, because I just didn't feel, but that's just not how I would have done it.
Right.
So that's just one thing that I kind of had to deal with, where it's just like, he is her child and she made the choice that she felt was best for him.
Right.
And that's what it is, like I can't do or say anything about that. That is what it is. But things were just getting really tense in our home because of all of this stuff, like it was like monitoring the remotes. What are you watching on YouTube? Like, are you doing your homework? Like we were still doing the things that we felt we should be doing as far as like homework and chores and, just doing the things. So like life in the household just got really tense. And it was just too stressful. Like it was putting a strain on our marriage and on the environment in our home.
Right.
And so once she said to us that she wasn't going to worry about school anymore, I was like, okay, we're not on the same page anymore.
Right.
So if we're not on the same page anymore, then I don't know if we can kind of work together on this, because it doesn't seem like we're trying to achieve the same things. And so, my husband told her, like, maybe the back and forth is not helping him, doing the 2 weeks on, doing the 2 weeks off, because we did like a small little break. And I asked him, I was like, like, how was it? Like, not coming over here? And he was like, it was fine. Like, I didn't really care. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, he doesn't really care. He doesn't really care to come over. It's no big deal. Our house is more rules, obviously. That's not something that he wants. And he told my husband, he was like, like, you're not my dad. Like, this isn't my family. Because like we would do family things a lot. Like we would go to my in-laws and, do like the family dinners, not all the time, but, just like family get-togethers and holidays and such.
Right.
Whereas, bio mom, she doesn't have any ties with her family. Nobody wants to talk to her. She's a difficult person.
Right.
So, but of course, that's not her fault. That's everybody else's fault.
Right.
So like, that's what he's kind of been in. So like the family thing he didn't care. He was like, I don't want to be around your family. That's just your family. I don't care about being here. So we were like, well, then what are we doing? Like at this point, he was 16, expressing he didn't want to be there. His mom was forcing him to come to us. Yep. And it was like, why? Like, why are we doing this? He's not his, like, that's not his son. That's not his dad. He doesn't feel that connection with him. We were hoping that maybe when he gets older, he will actually kind of see the things that, we tried to do for him. But after that, like we were just like, he should probably just stay with you. Let's see how that works for him. Like, let's see how not switching back and forth works for him.
Right.
And so that's what happened. And that was 2 years ago. And we haven't seen him.
At all?
No. Every time my husband has gone over to pick up stepdaughter, like there's been only one time, maybe 2 times that stepson has actually come outside to like throw out the trash or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally put on his hood and put on his mask, like his face mask, like the COVID face masks, to like not have any type of interaction or say hi or anything.
I wonder if he feels like y'all abandoned him.
I wonder that too. Well, the thing is like after we did that, because like we had a conversation with him, like, look, we want to see how it is if you stay at your mom's. Like, let's skip the 2-week once, like that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And we chatted with him. And that's when he was just like, yeah, it was fine. I didn't really care. We're like, okay. And then my husband reached out to him like over like messaging and stuff. So like we can chat. He got a cell phone, which we had been like kind of not doing because he had issue with electronics and, like searching things. So we had been against the cell phone. But of course, then once we left, then he got the cell phone.
Right.
So he tried to reach out and ask for his number so they can chat, but he always just ignored him.
Huh.
Yeah. So, I honestly, I don't know. I hope he doesn't think that. But honestly, I think if he does, I feel like, and I could be very wrong, I feel like if he feels negative feelings towards us, it's because his mom was in his ear about stuff.
Right.
Like that's what I think. Because like we did every darn thing we could have done for him. We tried everything. We tried so hard, and it was just, and that was really, really hard. And if it wasn't for listening to the podcast, I would have really been still beating myself up over that whole thing.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%, because I was like, trying to do all of these things, trying to fix all these things. And I thought, well, if his mom doesn't want to do for him, like how can I try to do for him? Like I'm trying so hard. We have no rights. I tried to get him so that we could have him on our insurance so I could help with like the cost of insurance. I offered her money. We'll pay for the therapy. Like, we'll do what we can, like whatever we can to help.
Right.
And she was just like, no, I'm not comfortable with that.
Huh.
So we were like, okay. And then I was just like, like my husband, like he's not your kid either. And he already, like he literally voiced how he does not feel like his family is also his family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was super difficult for us. But like I said, the podcast, anytime I would get a little nugget of something that I was like, I would share it with my husband, like, look, like you did everything that you could.
Yeah.
We did everything we could. So, but that's none of this still brought me to the Nacho method. So all of this happens. We're no longer taking care of stepson. We just have the other thing is stepson was having so many behavior issues that my husband was like, gosh, I really would like my daughter to have an opportunity to not be with him, because they were constantly, like, her entire life, he's been the one constant, because like they switched homes together always,
Mm-hmm.
and like in the middle of the night, like her mom had to wake her up and they had to go to the hospital because stepson had said, like, he had taken something and all that, so, my husband was really feeling like, I really want my daughter to have a little bit of space,
Mm-hmm.
just like a little bit of break,
Right.
just because it was just, she's like crying in the back seat. Like, it's just not something that you want your little kid to be around.
Right.
And so anyway, we were doing that and everything was okay. And stepmom is actually, or not stepmom, I'm stepmom. Bio mom texted me and said, I think it's best if all decisions concerning stepdaughter are handled between me and, my husband. And when she said that, I was like, so like offended. Like,
Yeah, because you're like, what?
yeah, I've been like, it's been, at the time, it was like 5 years. I was like,
Yeah,
it's been
what did I do
5
wrong?
years. Yeah. 5 years of doing everything I possibly can, of over communicating, just so that she felt like she was still playing a part, and, and it was all a team effort.
Uh-huh.
And so I was so upset. And honestly, my personality, I would have dove into that and been like, why, what's going on? Like, let's have, but I was just like, you know what? Okay. Like, your mom, he's dad, and it is not my concern.
Right.
You guys need to deal with that. And so it wasn't my choice to start that whole thing, but it was a huge blessing, because then my coworker was telling me about Nacho Kids and how she had she had listened to a different podcast and you were a guest on it. You
Okay.
and David were guests on it. And so she was like, listen to the episode. So I listened to the episode and you guys were on it and you were talking about the therapist and how those are Nacho kids. And I just thought, you know what? I need to listen to this. I need to dive into this. It felt like it was like the perfect moment. So then I listened to the podcast and I thought, that's it. I'm nachoing. This is for me. Like, I need to nacho, and the thing is like, I never felt unappreciated by my husband.
Uh-huh.
I never felt that. It was always me just wanting to help, wanting to do this, wanting to step in, wanting to do all of this, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And
but
he didn't
also,
expect you to.
He did not expect me to.
Yeah.
He did not. There was never anything type of expectation. It was just, like, let's say, for instance, there was a transportation issue with the kids. I thought, okay, well, how can we fix this? How can I solve this?
Mm-hmm.
Like what can I do? But then, Nacho came and I had told you that we had already started to have issues with stepson and like stuff. And like, at this point, stepdaughter is 8 years old and she's getting a tood.
Uh-huh.
And, I'm a person where when she is at her mom's or something and I am out shopping with our ours daughter, which we have an ours baby.
And how old is she?
She's she'll be 5. She'll
Okay.
be 5. Like, and I see something, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get that for her. And I just will buy random little things just because if I see something that reminds me of someone, I like to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do that. And then she'd come back. And then I see her wearing the thing or using the thing, and I didn't hear nothing, or, she didn't pay no never mind to me and thank me for that. And I started to feel resentment towards that. And I was just like, what on earth? Who is this child getting something and not being appreciative of it?
Right.
Like, this ain't my child. So that's what started that whole thing where I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I am feeling so unappreciated. Why am I spending my money buying these things? Why am I trying to go out of my way and thinking of all these things? Not even realizing, like she's just a kid.
Right.
Like she's just a kid.
Yep.
And she's just doing what kids do. But because she wasn't my kid, I was feeling some type of way about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, this is what this feels like,
Mhm.
And after I had our baby, I also started to feel different towards my stepdaughter. And that was really difficult for me to face.
You felt like crap, didn't you?
I did. I felt awful.
Yeah.
I felt awful. I mean, it could still bring me to tears when I think about it. Like, I don't want to feel different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I felt terrible. And I was just like, oh my gosh, why do I feel this way? Like, did having this baby mean I'm not going to love her? Like, it was just this whole, the whole spiral of just like, oh my gosh, I'm not a good person.
Right. And
I am a piece of crap.
And the thing is, this is not intentional.
Right.
But it's natural.
Yeah. It's a very, very difficult reality to kind of face because, like, again, I'm a teacher. I love all of these kids that walk through my door, and I'm like, why am I feeling this
I
way?
tell them to sit up, shut up.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just thought, oh my gosh, why do I have these feelings? And I really had to like think about, like, why do I feel so differently towards her than I felt towards the first stepdaughter? And I'm like, okay, well, she was a baby, she was only a year old and now I have my own baby. Like, there's just so many components to to all of those feelings. And it was just like, it was difficult. It was definitely
boiled down to you having your own baby.
It did. It really did. And honestly, it's one of those things where, like, a good friend, the friend of mine who told me about Nacho kids, she's in a relationship and he has kids and, she wasn't quite sure if she wanted to have a baby or not. And, and I can be very honest with her where I was like, you know what? I said, I love my baby so much. I am so happy I had her. I always wanted to have a baby. I always wanted to be a mom that way. And I said, but honestly, girl, if you don't have one, you're going to be happy too. Like, everything was going to be okay, even if you do not have that ours baby.
Right.
Like, it's just a different thing. It's just different.
And you never know how the ours baby is going to affect you, your partner, the kids.
Oh, yeah.
The kids could be, oh, no, we're going to take it and put it in the river like Moses.
Yeah.
Or the kids could just be obsessed with it and it be something that brings the family closer. You never know.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I am very, very grateful because stepdaughter was over the moon when we told her we were having a baby. And so she was even that much more over the moon when we found out it was a girl.
Oh, I'm sure.
She was ecstatic about that. And stepson as well. And, but I did notice, even with my husband, like, I asked him, I was like, do you feel differently towards our baby than you do towards, stepdaughter? And I could tell he was like really struggling with that. He was like, it is different. You know?
He's thinking, don't ask me that, man.
I know.
You're trying to make me feel like crap like you do.
Right on. Yeah. I was like, come down to my level. Okay. So we can kind of live in our misery together. But yeah, like, and he's verbally said, like, it's different. And he wishes it didn't feel that way. But, and I have even told him and played for him parts with, from the podcast of David saying, like, he loves each of his kids differently. They're different people,
right?
Like, and that's okay. So, I mean, I think society makes it really, really tough. Because I still will have conversations with people and I'll be like, oh yeah, my stepdaughter. And, and they're like, oh, that's your daughter. And, like, people try to just push that onto you.
Be like, oh, really?
Yeah, right? Like, I'm just like, yeah, that's my daughter until we're divorced and I can't see her no more. Like, I got all the...
Well, not just that, but until you go to take her to the doctor and you can't.
Well, that's true. I do take mine to the doctor because...
Yeah, but you had to get permission.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so it was... The thing is I didn't put her on my insurance until after we got married. So that way we had the same name. And
they don't ask.
They do not ask.
You're a tricky little person.
Yes. But the thing is also, like, bio mom had not taken her to the doctor in 3 years.
Oh, goodness.
she hadn't been to any checkup or nothing. And I was like, we can't do it like this.
Right.
And so I was like, I have to, like, so there are things that I don't nacho, that I can't nacho, so like the doctor
you choose not to.
You are so right.
Yeah.
I choose not to nacho the doctor's visits. Now, when the doctor said, okay, stepdaughter is going to have to go get blood drawn in the morning. And I thought to myself, well, I don't really feel like doing that. I told husband, I said, you're going to have to take her to go get her blood drawn in the morning. And he's like, okay.
Well, you do what you want to do.
Exactly. And thankfully he was so supportive when I found Nacho Kids. Like he was just like, okay, yeah, let's do it, because he knew, he could just feel that tension, like we had that tension. I didn't want any resentment, and I didn't want him to feel like he was holding me to some type of unspoken expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily he was incredibly supportive about, nachoing and doing everything. And it's been a real treat over the past 2 years to see him stepping up and doing all of the things, like I don't have to worry about doing homework anymore, which was a huge, huge issue for stepdaughter and me, because I'm the teacher. So I'm the teacher.
Right.
So that means I get asked all the questions.
Right.
And after I've been teaching all day at home and now I'm cooking dinner and now I got a little kid who's giving me an attitude about her math homework, I don't want to teach you.
Yeah, especially since she's not your kid.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had to tell him, I said, look, I am not showing homework. I cannot do it. I cannot do the homework. And I said, and I understand that sometimes you come across things that you do not know. And I am happy to help you. And you can ask me if you just ask me. If you just ask me, I'm happy to do it.
Right.
It was the same thing with like the chores. I said, I cannot be on this girl about her chores. I should not have to do that. You can do that. If you don't think she needs to do that chore, okay, cool, then you do the chore. But I am not dealing with the chores.
That's awesome. And how did he take that? He's okay with it?
He was okay with it. Yeah. He was like, okay, because, he don't want to do those chores either. So he really did step up and, like he's taught her like how to, make your own sandwich, girl. How about you get your own cereal, girl? Like, all these things, like it's okay to learn how to, and she actually ate it all up. She was like, I want to learn how to do that. I want to be able to do that. So she was doing her own laundry and all that stuff. By the time I started nachoing, I said, well, good, because she's doing her laundry. She's doing all them chores, like all those things. And I think she appreciated it, honestly. And I told my husband, I said, as difficult as a blended family can be, I said, stepdaughter, she has a huge benefit of being able to experience two very different home life, lifestyles.
Yeah.
And she's going to be able to appreciate that, I think, when she is older and doing her own living, because like, it's not so much that she's treated like a baby over at mom's.
Right.
It's just different. The expectations are different. And I just, it's a different environment and we do things differently. And I do think that it is something that will really help her in the long run of being able to adapt and things like that.
So do y'all still get her every 2 weeks on,
every
2 weeks off?
2 weeks? Yep. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And one thing that I didn't expect or anticipate was that mom was not going to care about holidays. Yeah. Like, because we started the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And I was like, okay, so that means this year you've got Thanksgiving and we've got, Christmas, and we can kind of flip flop them and change them around, however we need to, so that everybody gets their fair time and so that nobody misses out on the holidays. Well, this past year was the first time, because you know how the calendar works, or it's like the days only move so long. Well, like finally the calendar started where we were going to actually have her for like Christmas Eve into Christmas morning. And we were like so stoked. We were like, yay. And, my husband, he texted her mom and he was like, hey, do you want us to get her later on in the evening of Christmas Eve? That way you guys can still spend some time together and do gifts. And she said, oh, we already opened the gifts last week. It's just a day. It's just a day for us.
Well, that's awesome.
I mean, yeah, we were like, okay, I guess we don't got to worry about that. So then after she did that, because it was always this whole thing where it's like, once again, my husband has family and we spend time with that family, especially during holidays. And it's always like, well, do you have her? Do you not have her? And so now,
Y'all can have her all the time.
Yeah, for 4th of July, I was like, text her and see if we can go get her, because we're doing something and we know she ain't doing nothing.
Right.
So, and it was great. And I was like, we're just going to have to do that. And, and my husband and I always joke, we're like, because whether it's right or wrong, it's a competition. That's how he sees that. This is a competition between mom and dad. He's like, in any competition that's happening, it's going to benefit my daughter. That's how he sees it. He's like, oh, your mom doesn't do that in his mind. Nothing is ever said to her.
Right.
But we're always like, oh, she doesn't care about that. Well, let's make sure that we make it a thing. So that way she can be excited about it.
Right.
Because, she was like, oh yeah, mommy's not going to buy me anything for Easter because, that. And we're like,
I'm not a kid. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I told her, and I was like, well, honey, I said, I am always going to be getting my kids an Easter basket, even when they're grown. So I will still get you one too, because my mom still would. I mean, if I was still living in California, I'd still be getting myself an Easter basket and probably getting a Valentine's Day card or, all of those things. That's just how I was raised.
Are you from California?
I am from California.
Your accent does not sound like it.
Well, oh, really? Do I have an accent? What's it sound like?
Well, no, there's certain things that you're saying, and I'm like, you sound Southern.
Well, I mean, I am not from the South, but my dad is from Texas, so I don't know. Maybe stuff worn off on me. I don't know.
See, there you go. Stuff worn off of me. Yeah.
I don't even notice. It's probably just something
it's
I have
maybe,
my whole life.
Well, I guess it is an accent, but like you leave the G's off the end.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I know that California people say things weird, but
I don't have too many people I know in California. Actually, I've got some cousins that live there, and I've got a friend that lives there, but he talks really fast, and you have to really pay attention because you don't know what he's going to say.
Oh, yeah.
And
fast talkers.
Yeah.
I probably been talking too fast a little bit.
No, I can follow you. With him, it's like I have to focus. But no, there's just certain things that you're saying that I'm like, you got a little bit of something.
Yeah, I guess it's a melting pot of my family. So
yeah, just the way you said my family. Yeah, see.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah. I mean, is that all the things?
Well, let's see. How is stepdaughter doing not being around her half brother half the time?
Initially, it was very strange for her. She asked, is he going to come back here? Because since this whole thing happened, it's been 2 years now. We bought another house. We bought a house last year.
Okay.
And we bought by then it had been a whole year since stepson had been with us. So we bought a house, and we didn't set a room up for him, which I don't know how my husband felt about it, but I felt a lot of feelings about it, where I was like, okay, like we're not setting up a room for him. He hasn't been here for a year.
It's almost a finality to it.
It is, and that's really what I felt. And I know that stepdaughter, when she kind of realized like, oh, there's no room for him. Like, obviously there's room, but like,
right.
We didn't have a designated room for him. She questioned, like, is he not coming back? And so we kind of had to explain a little bit of, he should be with his mom.
Right.
And she, at that moment, she did not quite understand. And she honestly still doesn't quite understand how stepmom works, how stepdad works, how half brother works, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She did not even recognize or register that her brother was not my husband's son, even though stepson is black.
She still didn't.
She still, she didn't even think about that. My husband is white. But she did not even think about it. So then, I had to explain, okay, well, what does that actually mean then?
Yeah, it's the innocence of children.
It is. It really is, So it was a tough thing. And honestly, even for our daughter, she's going to be 5, it took a long time before she stopped asking about him, which was hard every single time.
Yeah.
That was super, super hard. And after a while I was like, okay, like I was just kind of hoping things would kind of just fall off and she would just kind of forget, but I mean, like, when my husband went to go pick up stepdaughter, there was stepson, with his mask on and his hood up and everything. And she was like, is that, and so, like things just kind of come back up and she kind of remembers, oh yeah, that's right. I had a
Yeah.
brother for a bit,
Yeah.
so that's hard, because when I got pregnant, we made it very clear to him, like, you are going to be her brother. Like, she's not going to know any difference,
Mm-hmm.
And we don't treat things any different, when you're here and things like that. So that kind of had to change and be different, kind of had to explain how I'm not his mom and he's not his dad. And, this is kind of the way things are now, which is difficult.
Right. Yeah. It's confusing sometimes with me trying to explain a story with bio mom, bio dad, who's the parent, who's the other parent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's like I'm trying to work on this Nacho Kids book.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I refer to like somebody's ex,
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure I put your partner's ex, or because if I just put the bio parent, it gets confusing as to who I'm talking about.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, vernacular and stuff that kind of goes in with this whole like blended family life. And yeah, I think your book is going to be amazing because I can't even imagine how many of these, families are actually blended, It's just such a norm now.
I tell you what, I think it's more of a norm than nuclear families.
Yeah.
I remember when I was pregnant with Jackson, his dad and I had already split up.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, oh, my poor baby, he's going to be that one kid in class.
Right.
That his parents aren't together like I was. I mean, there were very few kids in school that I remember their parents not being together.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to pick Jackson up one day, and I happened to ask one of the daycare workers, I said, I just have a question for you. And she said, okay. I said, how many kids in here are part of a nuclear family? She said, I don't know what you mean by nuclear family. And unless you're in a blend, most people don't know it's a nuclear family. Yeah. And so I explained it to her. She said, oh, there's 2 that are from a nuclear family.
Wow.
2 out of 20 kids.
Yeah.
So, and it's everywhere. And it might not be your first blend. You went through 2. Mm-hmm. And then the kids just kind of commingle through all that.
Yeah.
But everybody's related to everybody now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also like, I'm from a blended family. I'm an hours baby.
Oh, really?
I am. Yeah. And that was also another thing that kind of drew me to my husband is because, my father, when he got with my mom, like she already had three boys.
Okay.
So like, and my oldest brother on my mom's side, he was 15 when I was born. And then my other brother was like 8 and 7. So like my dad took on a lot as a stepdad. And I always really appreciated that from him. I can't say always because I was a child, but when I grew up, I kind of realized how much my dad really did. And my mom even acknowledged that before, where she was like, who wants to take on a single mom with 3 kids, especially 3 boys, like back then. And so, I was an hours baby, but they weren't together very long, so I lived in split households as well. And that was something that I had told bio mom. I said, look, I grew up in split household. I know what it's like to have to jump back and forth. And I know what it's like when you hear people talk about the other, parent, whether that's friends of the parent or, whatever, and I just did not want that to be the thing. But I honestly will say, like, full disclosure, like I've had moments where I'm like, ooh, I probably should have bit my tongue on that one.
Oh, yeah.
On that comment. Every day is a struggle, honestly.
I think it's a struggle as a parent in general.
Yeah.
And then you add the step parent to it, and there's all these emotions. Mm-hmm. Like you said, your husband says he feels differently towards your kid, your ours kid.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about that because she had a child before, and then they had a child together. And she said that she feels horrible for her child that she had before. because it's a different dynamic
Yeah.
that her daughter's seeing. And she had her daughter all the time. Like, I don't think she ever went to the dads.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But still, it's different.
Yeah.
And
It
you
is.
can't beat yourself up about it being different. It's just how it is.
Yeah. It's just how it is. Yeah. And you can't change it, you know.
Right.
You can't change it. You just have to kind of deal with it as it, you know, as those feelings come. And again, like we said, it is what it is. And I've also, like, I've said it to people since listening to the podcast of just being like, it's just not possible to like everybody, you know, like
Right.
it's so interesting that we kind of put this on the step parents of, well, now you have to love this kid. Well, what? Like,
Right. Oh, so does that mean you love my mama like she's yours?
right? Yeah. Like, we can't, like, as beautiful as that would be, like, it's just not reality. But as you always say, like, it's really just about being kind and being respectful and treating this person as, you know, as you would, you know, anyone's child. But that's also something that I still struggle with it, you know.
Right.
And I pray a lot when I do feel myself feeling these feelings where I'm like, oh, like, she's just a kid, you know, like, but also, like, it's okay if you're feeling this way, but also, like, oh my goodness, can you please stop feeling this way? Just it's tough.
Yeah. I know. Now, this is going to sound horrible, but I tell y'all everything, so I'm telling you anyway. I said something to Jackson the other day about David's kid looking for something in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that we were having that for supper, so not to use it. And Jackson said, would you have told me that?
Mm.
And I looked at him. I said, yeah. He said, no, you wouldn't have.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, so does that mean I'm a bad person?
Right, yeah.
He said, no, it means that you treat me differently than your stepkids.
Yeah. Wow.
And I said, but it's not intentional.
I know.
It's not like I think, oh, well, no, you can't have that. But if Jackson wants it, he can.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's not like you're not trying to be nasty or petty or vindictive and things like that. But I deal with those same situations too, where, like, if my daughter wants something, I'm like, okay, fine, just take it, go, you know, like, leave me alone, get out of my face.
Mm-hmm.
But if my stepdaughter does, I'm like, you can't have that, girl. And I'm like,
yeah,
I wouldn't be saying that if it was my own daughter. I wish that weren't the case. Honestly, I do wish it wasn't like that.
yeah. Well, and I know when David's oldest was moving back in with us while he was waiting for military housing,
Mm-hmm.
when we made a list of rules, I did go back through that list. And if it didn't apply, or I didn't think it would apply to my son in the future,
Mm-hmm.
I marked it off.
Yeah, that's good.
It ended up being no rules.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've still got questions for you. So you
Yes,
got to come back.
Okay.
I want to
I'm
talk
happy to
about
come back.
your life as a stepkid.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah.
And then I want to talk about the never living with regrets.
Okay, yes. We can fill up another episode with that for sure.
Yes, we can. So you and I will get that scheduled.
All right.
So thanks again. And we will talk to
Thank
you
you.
soon.
I am so happy that you asked me to come on here. I cannot believe it still.
I'm glad that you came on here, girl.
Well, thank you so much. It's been just lovely chatting with you.
Back at you.
All right. Well, you have a good one.
You too. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember, registration for the Nacho Kids Guided Bootcamp Challenge starts August the 8th. We will provide more information on our social media and on our podcast next week. So remember, until then, life is good when you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.